What a difference a year makes. I was all over Denver and Sean Payton last year saying they were going to be bad. Guess what? They are building it the right way. It's a good thing they didn't listen to me, but you have to for the next 30 minutes. We'll talk to you in just a second here on Locked On NFL.
The barbershop is open and Tony Wiggins has a chair for you. He's ready with some real NFL talk. The local experts of Locked On bring their expertise, and Wiggy is ready with his clippers and shears. Sit down and enjoy. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Oh, I heard it. She said your team every day, and she is exactly right. And we welcome you and thank you for making us your first listen, spending in about 30 minutes here on Locked On NFL with me, Tony Wiggins. And of course, it's Friday. That means Matt Williamson from Peacock and Williamson podcast and a whole bunch of other stuff, including one of the founding members of one of the founders of Locked On NFL. He'll be here with me today riding shotgun, and we got some things that we're going to go over. This episode is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Turn any TV into your Xbox. No console needed. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to hear more. Shout out to the everydayers for joining us here every single day like you do on Locked On NFL. Here's where we go. This is a roadmap. We're going to end up talking about the Chiefs and their protection issues from last year. We think they might have moved in a nice, positive way to solve them, but there's still some questions. We'll go over that. Right smack in the middle of the show, we're going to talk about the Titans and the Browns, how they're still searching for footing, trying to figure it out. That's what they're doing. We're going to go over Cleveland's draft. I don't think either one of us were too enthusiastic. The fact that they got extra picks and still missed on some key areas and invested in some areas that you usually and typically don't see teams that have a lot of holes invest in. We'll talk about that. We're going to start at the very top with the Denver Broncos and Sean Payton. And after him, we're going to touch on the Baltimore Ravens a little bit, but I'm starting with Payton because I feel like I'm on a permanent apology tour for thinking that they were terrible last year, them in Buffalo. And I have to own it. A lot of people don't own it, Matt, when they make mistakes. I totally misjudged and misread what the offensive guru and Sean Payton has decided to do, and that is build his defense and he's building those roads and bridges, right, that we talk about.
I'm a big fan. I really am. I mean, he took over a bad situation in Denver. I mean, remember, it wasn't as bad as Deshaun Watson, but they had just traded for Russell Wilson. They didn't have any picks. He's in 2 seasons. He is 18-16. I mean, it's phenomenal. I mean, it really is, because he didn't have that much talent. And now he's starting to get the talent, building through the lines, found a quarterback. Handpicking the guys that he wants. Barron kind of falls on their lap. Did they need him? No, but who cares? Just throw him in the mix. And
yeah, man.
I think we've had this conversation, but I firmly believe that there are maybe 10 coaches right now. Not even all of them are employed. Belichick being one of them. That they just almost can't bottom out. I mean, Tomlin, Harbaugh. I think Pete Carroll might be that guy for the Raiders, where you give them crappy ingredients and they'll still make you a decent stew. But if you give them good, you give them good ingredients, and it's a wonderful stew.
Yeah, man. Yeah, Harbaugh's probably like that too out in San Diego or in Los Angeles. McVay. There are just a handful of dudes, man. That it's like they're never going to be terrible. I think one of the people I can give credit for saying this is the late, great Bear Bryant, or somebody was talking about Bear Bryant, or maybe it was Bear Bryant talking about something else. And he said this, he'll beat you with his, or no, he said he'll beat you with his'n, or he'll beat you with yours.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't matter. Give me your players. You think you're going to beat me, and you think you got an advantage, or you think I have an advantage? Okay, I'll tell you what, 2 weeks before the game, give me your guys. I'll whoop you with your own people. And I think there's some coaches that do that.
100%. And what's crazy now I think about it is I think there's 4 of them in the AFC West.
The AFC West is treacherous, dog. You are not going. I'll tell you what. Go into any game against any team in that division unprepared, and you're gonna wear one. You're gonna take it. 100%. Y'all gonna have a quiet plane ride on the way home, man. I'm telling you. Listen to what Cody Rourke and my man Sayre said at Locked On Broncos about one thing in particular. That's RJ Harvey, the running back that was taken in the 2nd round. The Jaguars were going to take him in the 3rd round, according to Mike Silver, who was in the draft room. So shout out to them for grabbing him up. But listen to what they believe his impact.
RJ Harvey had, I think, 25 carries, $196, and 2 touchdowns in that game. And once again, just you mentioned that strength being vision. I also think you combine vision with patience. He understands. I think he's patient at letting his blockers get out to a guy and anticipating, okay, if this is an offensive tackle, he may try to seal this guy, which gives me a chance to run it to the outside. If he's going to kick the guy out, it allows me to cut back inside. Almost 9 times out of 10, I'm watching RJ Harvey make an explosive cut and get vertical. He's getting away from defenders. And sometimes I think with Javonte last year, one of the issues that we did see, and I don't ever want this to be a show where we're trying to just bring down Javonte. We're just pointing out where the issue was and why the Broncos upgraded this position with a guy like RJ Harvey. But Javonte would run back inside 2 defenders, and defenders would catch.
Okay, so it's all about RJ Harvey. It's all about getting pop in the running game, and I think they're going to do that. I like the fact that they're not paying attention to the fact that everybody says, well, he sucks in pass protection. You know what? So he can run, and he's going to provide a lot of pop in the running game that Javonte Williams didn't for the Denver Broncos. Yeah,
it's kind of a side note, but I can't help myself. I mean, I think it's such an NIL thing that these athletes now don't do the dirty work. But other than Trayvon Henderson and Ibuka, I had a really hard time finding running backs that were good in protection or wide receivers that would block anybody. So he's not alone in terms of being suspect in protection. And he's got a long time to learn. As long as he's willing, he'll probably be fine. And I just read this morning that we're talking about Sean Payton's career. He's been in the league a long time. The only time he's used a day 1 or 2 pick on a running back was Reggie Bush, Ingram, or Kamara. It's pretty good company. He finds one he likes and he uses them a lot, And
that means he also identifies how he's going to use those players, because what happens is you get these guys in and teams don't really use them the way that they say. That's what I like about Gladstone here in Jacksonville. When he talks about guys that are intangibly rich and they come here and they have to be nothing more than who they are, that means they're putting the onus on the evaluator to go out and get the right fit, not just a talented player, but somebody that's going. All you got to do is come here and do what you already did.
Just keep doing
and I think that's a pretty good thing. A team that does a good job of that, they don't really describe it that way, but they do a really good job. Is Baltimore. They added 2 more players just by sitting there and letting them fall to them. Listen to my man KO, Kevin Ostracker from Locked On Ravens.
The Ravens needed instant impact, right? I think that was one of the biggest things that I was looking at when it came to what would classify or what would make this a successful draft for the Ravens, right? Projects are great. High upside is great. You can swing on that if you want to, and Eric Cost certainly does every season, sometimes earlier than later, or sometimes he just does it later. But the Ravens, much like we saw last year, the impact they got from Nate Wiggins and Roger Rosengarten as rookies was a big reason why Baltimore was so successful last season. And this year, I think they're going to get that production from their first 2 picks again, Malachi Starks and Mike Green.
Mark my word, Malachi Starks is plug and play. They're probably going to single high him and put him back there, and don't be worried about him biting on the run, because he ain't going to have to. He's going to be seeing everything in front of him, and he's going to let his instincts take over. That's going to allow Kyle Hamilton to go back up and start roaming the field like a pterodactyl again. And they got Mike Green, who I thought was a first-round pick. If you take away some of the things that people may have been afraid about in his background, I think Mike Green gets 8.5, 9 sacks right away for Baltimore.
Couldn't agree more on the first 2 picks. And in very typical Ravens-like fashion, they work the comp game so well. They make a ton of picks. I mean, there were 5 picks in the 6th round, but if you hit on one of them, it's worth it. Just keep taking bites of the apple. And I thought their biggest need going into the draft was guard. I like their tackles. I like their center, but I don't love their guards. Well, they drafted 3 linemen that I think all are going to project a guard. If you get one of those guys that hits, you're in good shape,
Yeah, man, and they're adding to the structure that they already have. It's just something to be said that when you have a quarterback, and you know this from covering the Steelers all of these times, having a quarterback or being committed to the quarterback is kind of the same thing. Because once you're committed to him, then you're trying to build everything up around him, right? But it feels like that when you're not worried about the quarterback position, drafting is so easy. And that's why
it does become a little easier. Yeah,
it does. That's why these teams that we're going to talk about here, with the exception of the Chiefs, we're going to talk about the Browns. We're going to talk about the Titans here moving forward, and why it seems like it's so hard when you have no commitment to a quarterback, or when you committed to a quarterback financially, he just ain't the right one. And like Deshaun Watson. We'll talk about that in just a second here on Locked On NFL. Today's show is sponsored and brought to you by Amazon Fire TV. Oh my God, man. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn on any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign in to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play it's included, and you're ready to go. Dive into hundreds of premium titles, including EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty, and easily as you can stream your favorite shows. What if you could jump into your favorite Xbox titles without needing your console in every room? Woo! That would make a lot of people's day super, super happy. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd generation, Fire TV 4K Max 1st and 2nd generation, and Fire TV Cube 3rd generation. All right, moving along here on Locked On NFL, where it is your team every day, talking to my man Matt Williamson about the NFL draft. I know we're a week past it, but I had not spoken to Matt. We had not gone over this stuff. We'll be getting ready for mini camps. Got my email this morning that mini camp and getting credentialed for all of that. Yeah. So we'll have a lot more to discuss as we continue to move forward. But right now, we're going to start at the very top of the draft. Tyler Rowland got his quarterback, and he wants to make sure that the Titans understand who needs those reps in training camp and minicamp. Check Tyler Rowland out, all puffed up, talking about his new quarterback, Cam Ward.
The Tennessee Titans cannot give any of Cam Ward's reps to Will Levis. Look, this is the second time now the Tennessee Titans have come out and said it's an open competition at quarterback. All the guys are going to get their fair share of reps. We heard it from Mike Borgonzi. We heard it from Brian Callahan on Thursday. Look, I'm sorry, I'm going to continue to choose to believe that this message that they are sending is just coach speak. It's just a public narrative that they're saying because it's the right thing to say. Because the reality is, if they're telling the truth and they're actually going to give even reps to Will Levis and Cam Ward and the other quarterbacks, and it's truly an open competition at the quarterback position, then that is insane. It is entirely negligible, because the reality is Cam Ward earned it when he earned the number one pick in the draft. And you don't unretire number one and have Warren Moon come out and hand the jersey over to Cam Ward and roll out the red carpet for him just to have him in an open competition with the guy that you gave up on. It doesn't make any sense at all. So again, I'm choosing to believe that the Titans are just saying the right thing publicly and that they don't actually mean this, because if they do, it makes no sense at all to sacrifice reps for a guy who is your franchise quarterback going forward and needs to be ready to play, for a guy that you have clearly given up on to go with Cam Ward. So I'm not going to believe it.
I get Tyler's point, and let me, for the sake of housekeeping here, let me explain why I get it. I get it because when they drafted Trevor Lawrence here, they had all the hoopla, generational talent. They had billboards all over Jacksonville. Mm-hmm. I mean, people were going absolutely nuts. And Urban Meyer said he's going to be in competition with Gardner Minshew. So I get it because it sounds ridiculous, right? But I do think that there has to be some sort of transition. I believe the Titans, while they're not saying it because it's just the proper thing to say, I think this is more for the other players than it is. And it gives the idea that Cam is going to have to work for it, and he's not going to stick his lip out and bellyache about it. He's going to actually functionally do it. They drafted him number one because they know. It's almost like Job. They know exactly what he's going to do. He's going to beat Will Levis out, and he's going to make it really, really clear. And what they're trying to do is make it so clear that everybody goes, we got our guy. And you have to do that with veterans. You got to do that with a 32-year-old offensive lineman that has 3 kids in the mortgage. You don't give anything away when you're dealing with those types of people in your locker room.
Yeah, we know Tyler the Madman can get a little wound up. I think he needs to chill on this one. It's going to be just fine. You know, they're not even playing football right now. It is coach speak, and everybody has to earn it, etc. He'll earn it. I mean, they will divvy out his snaps very, very much in his favor. Doesn't mean Levis will never touch the football again. He's going to be the number 2, and they're going to still try to develop him and maybe showcase him for a trade and play him in preseason. But I would not worry about this one little bit. Ward will get all the attention he needs.
Yeah, and it's important that if they're going to keep Levis, they have to find a nice little package for him too. Because that's what happens, man. A dude comes out because he gets bumped in the head and he can't finish protocol, and you just stick the other guy in there. You're not going to keep going with the same game plan. You got to have a package for a second quarterback, which leads me to this. When teams realized Shedeur wasn't a starter, I think a lot of teams were turned off by the fact that they didn't think he could actually come in and be a backup because he doesn't carry himself that way. So not carrying yourself like a backup is one thing, but not being able to accept the fact that you're going to be a backup is quite another. And I think the lack of picking up with Shedeur until later on had a lot to do with that. Listen to Spencer German talk about the Browns draft. And then when we come back, I'll give you a chance. We'll go over the Browns draft. And we'll also give you a chance to tell us what you think about Cam Ward. Check this out.
On Saturday after the draft, I asked Andrew Berry if the wide receiver room was still a work in progress, given that they didn't draft one in the NFL draft. And his answer to me was basically, the entire roster is a work in progress. So they'll look to improve it any way they can. Well, a couple of days later, it seems like they're suddenly prioritizing wide receivers. And not only did they sign Deontay Johnson to a 1-year deal, embattled AFC North, been around, wide receiver, but they also extended a rare unrestricted free agent tender to Elijah Moore. I think I've sort of gotten the gist of what that means, which basically allows them to offer him a deal that's a smaller amount that he can sign if he doesn't find anything else. And then if he signs elsewhere, he's part of the Browns' compensatory formula for them to get comp picks next year. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out because he did visit with the Bills today. The Deontay Johnson signing, though, is an interesting one. Don't know if I love it, and I will talk more about why on tomorrow's episode of the Locked On Browns podcast.
All right, so familiar name you heard there, Deontay Johnson. I never figured out what was going on. All I can tell you is this. Something had to be going on when people have you in the building for a week and say, nah, see you later.
Yeah. He is a distraction. I can tell you for a fact that when the Steelers traded him to Carolina, they probably would have traded him for a bag of footballs. Like he had to go, it got to that point. Yeah. Really hard worker, good route runner, but for whatever reason, he is everywhere he's gone since. He has really turned his teammates and coaches off in a big way. And the Ravens experience was kind of laughable. I mean, he kicked them out of the building. I didn't know if he'd play football again. So, yeah, bargain bin shopping, but I don't know. It's just one more distraction that the Browns have. I didn't like the Browns draft at all, to be honest with you. They got all kinds of good grades, but I don't.
Yeah, let's get into that real quick because in a draft that people thought wasn't as good as drafts from the past, or some people say it was one of the worst drafts outside of the first 5 or 6 or 2 or 3 players.
Yeah.
How could you come away with 2 quarterbacks and 2 running backs in a 2 day 3, 1 day 2 and 1 day 3 quarterback, 2 running backs, no defensive linemen, and this is where the depth was in this draft, outside of Mason Graham, of course. Yeah. Didn't get that other edge, didn't help Denzel Ward in the back. What are and what were the Cleveland Browns thinking?
I don't understand it at all. So I can't remember if we talked about this on Friday, but on Friday there was 1 round in the draft in the books. And frankly, trading away from Hunter might go down as an all-time blunder. I mean, that might be not taking Michael Jordan. I mean, who knows? But for the haul they got, I understood it. That they need so much more infrastructure. They haven't had any picks in 3 years. And then they take Mason Graham, who I think is extremely overrated. But that 4th and 5th pick is kind of no man's land. I would have taken Membo, but there wasn't a slam dunk easy pick there. So I kind of felt for him, and that's why they had to, the Jags had to pay that price because 5 wasn't a wonderful place to pick. So when they took Graham on Friday, I thought, okay, now they have a ton of picks. They got a high floor player from a big school, that it's a good culture builder. They're going to draft linemen like crazy. You know, we talked about, boy, wouldn't Abdul Carter be a nightmare opposite Myles Garrett? Big time edge draft. They'll get one of those type of dudes, Ezaraku or somebody like that, you know, and they're going to draft linemen like crazy. Now they have 2 first-round picks. They'll get their quarterback a year from now. And everything you said is 100% true, but they drafted 0 offensive linemen. 0. And the reason they were ever good is when Wyatt Teller and Batonio and those guys were, you know, a good unit. 0 offensive linemen is criminal to me. Backup tight end, 2 running backs, 2 receiver or 2 quarterbacks. They don't do any good if nobody blocks for you. I mean, I would have drafted 90% big men, you know, edges and tackles like crazy, and prepare. Instead, you have now 4 quarterbacks, and you have more of a distraction and more of a mess. I don't understand it at all. A lot of brand name players. It's just bad team building.
It is bad team building. Let me go through it real quick, and I'll tell you why. Mason Graham, like you said, okay, I get it. I'm glad the Jaguars didn't pick him, to be honest with you.
I bet.
Round 2, Carson Schwarzenegger. You get an off-ball linebacker at 33. At 36, you take Quinshon Judkins. I ain't got no problem with Quinshon Judkins.
They took 0 premium positions except for 2 backup quarterbacks.
Yeah, watch this.
Yeah.
In round 3, they took Harold Fannin Jr. They already got Joku, who's a move tight end. Right. What are they doing? Why didn't you get a dude that can block?
Yeah,
all right. All right. Round 3, you went with a quarterback, Dylan Gabriel. I know you have to attack the quarterback position because you don't have one. Well, round 4, you go with Dylan Sampson. Love the player, like him. Come on, man. You just went with running back in round 2. And then you turn around and go quarterback again in round 5. They have absolutely no idea what they're doing in Cleveland, and everybody needs to be fired, in my opinion. Give me a quick assessment on Cam Ward, though, man. You know, lots of people saying he'd be the 5th or the 6th quarterback in last year's draft, which doesn't mean he wouldn't be good. Right. Because Bo Nix was good last year. What do you think Cam Ward brings to the table for the Titans?
I'm a fan. I mean, I expect a rocky first year. I mean, the infrastructure is still being built, but at least there's a line. I like picking up pieces like Tyler Lockett, you know, for the room and, you know, as a trickle down effect. But I don't expect him to be a good football team, but I do expect him to be the answer. And I think a lot of years he would have been the first quarterback off the board. And compared to last year's class, he would have been number 4 for me. I had him ahead of McCarthy, Penix, or Nix when they were coming out, you know.
Absolutely. No doubt about it. All right. We're going to look at the Chiefs and decide whether or not these guys have enough protection for Patrick Mahomes. The 2 times Patrick Mahomes has looked crazy in the Super Bowl and they got blown out, it's because they couldn't block anybody. So maybe this is a lesson for the Chiefs, who really should know this lesson better than anybody because they always seem to have a really good offensive line. Maybe they're taking it real serious this time. We'll talk about that in just a second here on Locked On NFL. Locked On NFL here, third and final segment, the Chiefs, their draft when it comes to getting impact players. They needed offensive linemen. I was listening to one of the Schwartz brothers, whichever one of those Schwartz brothers that played for the Chiefs. I followed both of them, and the one that played for the Chiefs thought that they shouldn't have gone out. You know, before the draft, he was saying, no, we don't need another tackle. They just took one last year. They got guys that they can develop. I don't think a team like that with Patrick Mahomes in his prime that is now used to winning can take that, we can just develop a guy approach. I think they really had to do what they did. So what they did was it was high risk, high reward. They got a guy who's injured, but most people felt that if he wasn't injured, he would have been right on the heels of Will Campbell as the top pick at offensive tackle.
I love it. And now there has been some talk about immaturity and things like that he's, you know, needs some work in that development in the situation.
He's in the right place.
He's in the right place, though. I mean, Kelsey and Mahomes, Reed, they'll handle that stuff just fine. But I think what's being lost here is the right tackle, Taylor, has been a real problem. And
that's your boy. That's your guy. That's our guy. I like him, but you know, I like him personally and didn't want the Jaguars to let him go.
Fella.
Yeah, but he ain't played. He hasn't looked that good at $20 million.
And he's been expensive. I mean, they might need 2 tackles. I mean, Moore, who they signed, is kind of a journeyman. They don't have a replacement for Tooney. So yeah, they drafted Siamatea, but he looked really raw as a rookie. And I just think you never, ever, ever want to be in a position where you're compromising protection. I mean, that's the only time you don't win the Super Bowl is when you can't block anybody. I mean, otherwise you win the Super Bowl. I mean, it's pretty cut and dry. And you get the most talented left tackle, the hardest position other than quarterback to find in the league at the 32nd pick. Jump on it.
They did get one player I do love in round 3, Ashton Galati. I found out that the Jaguars were going to take him. According to Mike Silver, they were going to take him, but the Chiefs took him at the top of the 3rd round. That's also the player that the Rams were trying to trade up for, according to Mike Silver. And the Jaguars were either going to take him or they were going to trade that pick to the Rams. And then after the pick was made, the Rams said, no thanks. And it turns out that Galati was the one that the Jaguars wanted, and they were also the team that was the player that the Rams wanted. So when he went, the Jaguars actually tried to move the pick, and then the Rams were like, nah, that's what we wanted to. So it always works out when you look at it from hindsight. But listen to the guys from Locked On Chiefs talk about their new addition.
They're serious about protecting Patrick Mahomes. That's all they needed to say. And to me, that's why it's my favorite pick. If he can come in and be, like I said the past couple of days, if he can come in and be just above average, it's still worth a first-round grade. It's still worth a first-round pick for me. It doesn't matter if he can't start in 2025.
So whenever he gets there, it's enough to be your favorite pick.
Yep. I think there's
hair, isn't it?
It's not the hair. It's protecting Patrick Mahomes. It's you have a franchise quarterback that is taking you to 5 Super Bowls in 6 years. They've won 3 of them. That's insane to say.
It is insane to say, and that's why I think they did a good job here. This is like taking care of the present and taking care of the future. If this goes the way we think it, maturity and knee and all of that stuff, they could have their left tackle solved for the next decade.
Mm-hmm. And that's a ridiculous pick at the end of the first round.
Absolutely.
And so the first mock I ever did this year, I gave a lot of the injured guys the benefit of the doubt. It was well before the draft. They'll be fine for the draft. And I mocked him number 4 to the Patriots. I mean, I thought he was the best left tackle out there. And, we didn't get the clear medical, so he didn't go that high. But in terms of what I saw on tape, I would take him over Campbell.
Woo, that's high praise. So
yeah.
The high risk, high reward. And I don't think the injury part of it is the risk. It's just that most teams, they want that instant impact. They want you to run out there day one. Guys are looking to save their jobs. And, Andy Reid ain't worried about that stuff. And that's why teams that pick at the bottom of the draft, even with Philly sat there, man, and got Jihad Campbell.
We just talked about the Ravens. Same thing.
This is just what they do, man. And I have a hard time figuring out why the teams that pick at the top of the second round, like the Browns, can't adopt that same philosophy and figure out a way to get better players. You want to find out who did what and who's on what roster and where the deep cuts are? Check out Locked On NFL Scouting with Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino. These guys actually love telling you that stuff. They dig in the crates like an old DJ, man, and come up with all of the depth charts and all of the scouting from around the entire National Football League. Make sure you make that your second listen. Matt, it's been real as always on Friday. Every time I see you, I know it's time for us to go and attack the weekend, right? We ain't got too much to do other than just go have a good time, but we appreciate you spending time with us as always. We'll see you next Friday, Matt. And Matt and I will thank you right now for joining us and spending 29 minutes with us here on Locked On NFL. Take care.